Namaste, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are watching this program. I welcome respected Sukhdevji and all dear friends. I also extend my warm wishes on behalf of United Consciousness of Diwali to all of you. India and a big part of the world is celebrating Diwali today. And Diwali is the symbol of victory of self-control and self-discipline over ego. So, dear friends, we are going to start with the second session of self-control today. In first session, respected Sukhdevji mentioned about the basic difference between animal and human is ability to control yourself. Success in life needs self-control. It is the message of Gita, Upanishads, and Vedanta also. And if you really want to be happy in life, you need self-control. Even every ethical behavior needs self-control. So for that, we need to know what are the points for me to improve, what are the areas where I need self-control, and then I need to put in practice my determination to self-control. So Dev, you also mentioned about a couple of techniques. He said for some people, mere conviction, strong conviction leads to that self-control and they change their behavior, but it is not easy. So you need to go for certain techniques, and some of the techniques he mentioned was a miracle questions. And he mentioned about a miracle question, and he said that utilize the technique of Atta 3-2-1 now yoga. So with that note, I will again request Sukhdevji to continue with this beautiful journey on self-control. Over to you, Sukhdevji.
Namaste, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and happy Diwali, especially to all the Indian friends and all those who are linked with Indian culture. Many thanks to Dr. Vikranchi for this good summary of my last class, and welcome all for the second class of our 5-week course on self-control, part of Human Happiness series of United Consciousness. Last week I spoke, among others, reasons why it is important to have self-control. Just to repeat it once more, as Dr. Vikranchi just mentioned, success in life, but also for health, for inner contentment and happiness, ethical behavior, and for spiritual aspirants, especially important, God realization, Kaivalya Moksha. That's where we want to go. For all that, you basically need self-control. Last time, I especially spoke about the first verses of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and I want to show them here. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is basically the main scripture on yoga, and it starts with Atta Yoga Nushasanam. This means now the exposition of yoga, or now the practice of yoga, the treatise on yoga. And this Atta is quite important. And I don't know whether you tried it out or whether you had any experience doing it. Just to repeat, if you want to if one counterpart of self-control is procrastination, and one easy way is you say Atta 3-2-1. Atta means now, or you can say now Atta Yoga, now yoga. Or when you wake up in the morning, you can say Atta Yoga, now is yoga. Or even when we go to Bhagavad Gita, there are many explanations on yoga. Dr. Vikranchi also has a whole series on the Bhagavad Gita, which I can highly recommend, which is part also taking place parallel. I think it's on Saturday or Sunday. Saturday, and it's much more. So when you when you have any challenge, you can say Atta Yoga, because yoga is not just when when something is when you do asanas or pranayama or you meditate, but if there's some challenge, then you can say Atta Yoga. Now there's the need of yoga. If somebody's nasty to you, you can say Atta Yoga. If something goes wrong, you can say Atta Yoga. If you don't have the success that you normally have, Atta Yoga. Or if you're invited to do something important and you are a little bit scared, you can say Atta Yoga. So I just have to think about I'm no longer used to teach in English, so I'm used to do Zoom meetings in English, but for more than 10 years, I've not been teaching in English. So I also had to think, yeah, it's again a challenge. Some yogic expression I had to use, some translation to get from German to English. So Atta Yoga, whenever there's a challenge, you can say Atta Yoga. And if you want to start Atta, 3, 2, 1. Then what is actually yoga? There are different explanations what yoga is. And I just want to go through what the Bhagavad Gita says what yoga is. Bhagavad Gita has different explanations of yoga in different chapters. Probably 3 of the most known ones are second chapter Bhagavad Gita, 48th verse. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Usually you translate yoga means equanimity, samatva, equanimity. Sama means, or shama means mental quality, mental stillness, but samatva is this state of equanimity. And of course, the state of equanimity doesn't come naturally. For maybe temperament-wise, there's some people who are have more that temperament of equanimity, but quite a few actually don't. And then but you're not bound to get angry or get scared and depressed. You can do something to get to a more even mind. And that is called yoga. The practice is yoga and reaching is also yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate, yoga means equanimity. On the 50th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, you find yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga means skill in action. When you want to reach a goal, you have to be skillful. And to do this, skillful means yoga. Of course, the word karma has so many different meanings, and most likely Dr. Vikranchi will explain more in that Bhagavad Gita series, because karma is one of the main terms in the Bhagavad Gita. You could say it's karma sukhaushalam, skill in acting to your karmic lessons. Whatever happens, it's skill to achieve what you have to achieve. It's skill how you act. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita defines karma yoga in very wonderful terms. But for our purposes here, yoga also means skill in action. And if you want to have success in anything, you have to be skillful. And what prevents you from being skillful? Again, the opposite of self-control. Some people, they don't have the discipline to continue on what has to be done. Some get angry and some get hurt and feel they're not, how would you say, they're not treated properly. And quite often, especially non-profit initiatives, don't come to anything because one or the other feels hurt or is not respected sufficiently, and so on. Or the idealists, often they are principle driven. And then if the other person does not act the way they want, then the initiative breaks apart. So it's one of the big challenges for anybody who has some non-profit, idealistic endeavors, and to make sure you have the goal in mind and you're not hurt by certain things. For example, in business, usually people can overcome being hurt because they want to make money and they want to have power. For these purposes, they are quite skillful. But if you are an idealistic person, and I assume you're all idealistic if you listen to it, those who are present now and those who are listening later on YouTube or Facebook or wherever, if you listen to this kind of program, then you are idealistic. And if you're idealistic, you have to be skillful. Bhagavad Gita says, have a goal, but don't continuously think about the goal. Do what has to be done. And in that way, if you see that is your duty or that's your heart's desire, you have to do it and you continue doing it. And sometimes it means self-control. You have to not be sidetracked by emotions like anger or depression or whatever. So, yoga karamasu kaushalam. And the third definition I want to take here is yoga is the cessation of the union with pain. So, wonderful thing, because dukkha means pain, and some yoga means you are linked with it. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita makes word games continuously, and that is so wonderful. And so, of course, for Indians it will be much easier, because even if you're not knowing Sanskrit so well, especially North Indian languages are also similar. So yoga is yoga, but some yoga means union or link to, and we're linked to dukkha, to suffering. You could say there's suffering is one thing, but really suffering is a second thing. For example, you can have some pain in the shoulder. And you can say, okay, there's pain in the shoulder, sometimes it happens, will go away, no problem. Or there's some pain in the shoulder, meaning maybe some stiff muscles, I have to do some exercise to somehow extend the front part of my chest, and then it will go away. But I could also be linked to it. Some dukkha, some yoga, oh, I'm so painful, not the shoulders, but I feel so pain, I'm full of pain, and so on. And now the shoulder, what will happen? And maybe I have to have surgery, and maybe it will go wrong, and then I will be dead, or it will be stiff, I can't lift up my hand anymore. And continuously, you're thinking about that suffering. Dukkha, some yoga. It's also one of the special capacities of human being, that you continuously think about these problems. One of the members of our ashram had a dog, and the dog developed some cancer in the leg. So the leg was amputated. And everybody thought, oh, this poor dog, what will happen to it? Only has 3 legs. And of course, the wound had to heal, but then afterwards the dog was just running around just as happy as before. It didn't seem to matter for the dog that it didn't have 1 leg less. Well, dog fell down from time to time and shook his head a little bit, but he didn't have that dukkha samyoga that human beings often have. When the pain is no longer there, there's no dukkha there. And even if there's pain, it will not be taken too much. And so yoga, samyatam yoga, is known as viyoga, so the separation of the union with pain. So all that, with the way Bhagavad Gita defines yoga, all has to do with self-control. I just wanted to make some connection with Bhagavad Gita, as some of you might also take the course of Dr. Vikranchi and Swami Suryananda. And so the different scriptures are linked with each other. So Patanjali says, Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga means the stilling of the modifications of the mind. So you could say Patanjali goes right to the source, because then tada drashtu svarupe vasthanam. This means then the seer abides in his own essential nature, meaning we are not our mind, we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions. And actually, human being will never be happy with whatever we get. We will never be happy. Doesn't matter whether we have a good job, a good wife or husband, we have nice children, we have a nice house, we have enough to eat, we have security. Actually, human being will never be happy. Why? With external things, I mean, he will never be happy. There's some urge in human being. There must be more. You could say, I think Pascal once said, all the problems of human beings come because human being is not capable to stay at home, go a little bit on a walk and be happy. Like a cat or a dog, human being has that urge. And the urge is because in human being, this urge is awakened. I want to know my true nature. Human being is not happy with a little happiness, is not happy with a little power, not happy with a little pleasure. We're looking for, we would say, moksha. This means freedom, kaivalya, liberation, God realization, brahmanyana, self-realization, atmanyana. And how do we get there? By stilling the modifications of the mind, you could say, by stilling the thoughts. So now, of course, the question comes: why? How do we control our mind? Of course, I always like to say again and again why it's good to do it. It's human being. Also, if he wants something, he can achieve it. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry once said, if you want to teach somebody how to do sailing, then don't teach him too much about the different type of boats and about the different types of sails and about the different kinds of ways and wind and so on. Just tell him how wonderful it is to sail. Tell him about the greatness of the ocean. Then human being will actually do everything he needs to go sailing. So the same I discovered that is when you have great yoga masters, when they're young, they teach all the different techniques and go very systematic about it. And the older they get, basically they do two things. Once they say how wonderful it is to be self-realized, and the second is how horrible it is to be not self-realized. So these two things they explain, and then afterwards one gets the motivation. I want to reach it. And of course, then you need all the different techniques. And in order to talk a little bit which techniques you can use and which can be used, I want to use a model using the Antakarana model. This means the inner instrument. And this comes from Vedanta and is based also on Sankhya. And it speaks about there are 4 different parts of the human mind. Of course, we can first say my true self is Atman, which is also called Purusha. And Purusha means the soul or the essence of human being. Atman means the self. In Vedanta, we often use the term Atman. In Sankhya, we often use Purusha. In this meaning, it's all the same. So in our true nature, we are not thoughts, we're not emotions, we're not this body. And of course, if you're not used to this kind of terminology, I want to say a few words. But of course, if you one little request, if you are able to turn your video on, that would be helpful. So now I just see Dr. Vikranji. So naturally, I assume, as I know he's a very good Vedantin, that everybody I speak to, they know everything about the self and we're not the self and so on. But also there might be some who don't know, have not heard about it too much, and there definitely will be on YouTube those who are not that connected with these terms. So we're not this body. Vedanta says, and Raja Yoga also says, we are the witness. We can witness there is this body. There are thoughts, there are emotions, but I am not the body, I am not the emotions, I am not the thoughts. Sometimes when in a deep meditative state, you can watch quite well your thoughts, or at least you can be aware that thoughts come and go. Of course, in an even deeper meditative states, there are no thoughts. There's just being. But in between, you have the ability, you watch your thoughts, you become aware of your thoughts, and you know, I am not these thoughts. In deep meditative states, you can lose body consciousness. You are aware there's this body, and you left your physical body. You might even see your physical body from above or from far away. Or even if you're in the body, you can watch the feelings and emotions of the body. So we are the immortal self. We are what is also called Satchidananda, meaning we are pure consciousness, we are pure being, Sat is pure being, Chit pure consciousness, and we are Ananda, pure joy. And that is our true nature. And then for being in this world, to fulfill our dharma, this means our responsibility, our duty, and to experience our karmic lessons, we have a physical body and we have a mind. The physical body you can call as bahikarana, external instrument. Karana in this case means instrument. So you have an external instrument and you have an internal instrument. Internal instrument is then called anta karana. Karana instrument, and anta means inner instrument. And when we talk about self-control, it means how can we deal with our inner instrument? Our inner instrument, or let's say before I go to that, when we see, I said we're in this world to experience our karmic lessons, and we're here to do our dharmic duties. If we say we are the immortal self and we have to fulfill, we do that on this planet Earth. Let's suppose you would be put onto a Mars mission, so the planet Mars. If you go there to the Mars mission, you have some, you could say, some mission to fulfill, and you also want to experience something. In order to be able to survive on the Mars, you will need some, you could say, you need some special clothing, you need a helmet, and so on, and to be able to go onto the Mars. The same, if we want to experience something on this earth, we need a physical body. We need the body, we need breathing equipment, we need instruments to experience, like the five senses. We need possibilities to do something. So you could say we are pure consciousness and we have an inner instrument, antakarana. And if you have to do something on this planet, our dharma, our responsibility, we need a body, and to experience our karmic lessons, we also need some inner instrument. But all that will be directed via our inner instrument, the antakarana. Now the antakarana can be subdivided in different ways, and different philosophical systems and psychological systems divide the mind in different ways. Now I want to now go to the most known in yoga. This means four difference. You have four different parts. You have ahamkara, which is the ego maker. Here, kara with only kara, not karana, but kara means the causer or the maker. And aham means I am. Ahamkara is the causer of ego. Like when you say, I am 58 years old, or I am a yoga teacher, or I am a housewife, or I'm highly intelligent, or I'm a very practical being. This means you identify. Ahamkara means you identify, actually you identify with your body, you identify with your mind, you identify with your thoughts and emotions. That is ahamkara. And from the point of view of Vedanta and Raja Yoga, that's the source of the problems. It's like when you would go on your Mars mission, and then you identify with your space suit. And you suddenly think, I'm my helmet, and I'm my oxygen mask, and so on. So ahamkara means you identify. Second part of your mind is buddhi. Buddhi means reason, intellect. In buddhi, there's also the free will. The third part of the mind is manas. And manas is the thinking and feeling capacity. And you could also say the manas is the automatic thinking, the automatic feeling and emotions and so on. And then you have the chitta with samskaras and vasanas. In this context, chitta means the subconscious, the mind, the memory with past impressions and desires. So, and the word chitta has many different meanings in Sanskrit. Like in a broader sense, chitta is all the mind. When Patanjali speaks about in the second verse about yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, then it means chitta is the whole antakarana. But when you have chitta in the context of the four parts of the mind, then chitta is just the subconscious, the memory with past impressions and desires. So, for example, if you look at the background here, when you see, then you see a picture. Now I say watch at that picture, then you see something. This means your indriyas, your senses give you something, give you a picture. And then you start thinking. So first of all, the picture comes into your mind, and the mental picture of that picture, that is a thought in your mind. Then you think, who is that person? And so you think about who is that person, and then you look into your subconscious. And of course, if you have seen picture like that in a big form, then you know immediately, this is Swami Shivananda. So you decide, this is Swami Shivananda. So the decision comes from buddhi. The thinking is first of all getting the impression. Secondly, it brings samskaras and vasanas. This means past impressions, memory, and even emotions. If somebody of you has already has a devotion to Swami Shivananda, like me, if I, for example, would go to some yoga center and I see a picture of Swami Shivananda, immediately I'm happy. I just see that picture, my heart opens up, I feel familiar and I'm happy. So all that is because there's memory and I have wonderful and deep spiritual experiences with Swami Shivananda, even though I never met him physically. He left his body when I was a few months old and he was in a different country. But I have very strong connection with Swami Shivananda. So if you had that strong connection, also you see that picture and then you feel connected. But it could also be you don't have that strong connection, but you've already seen many pictures of many Indian masters and saints, or it might not even be Indian, you don't see it that closely. So could it be Baba Ramdas? Could it be Mahatma Gandhi? Could it be somebody else? So you think about it. And then your buddhi will say, yes, this is Swami Shivananda. You decide. And then comes the ahamkara, the ego maker, said, yes, I knew. And then you are happy, I knew, and it's my guru. Or I know among many, I have seen it. Or maybe while I was talking and before I mentioned Swami Shivananda, you might have said it was Papa Ramdas. As a distance, it might be the same. Then you might be very disappointed. Oh, I didn't see it properly. You identify. So now this system of the different parts of the mind, you can also use in self-control. Like out of all, if you want to increase self-control, you can work on any of these. For example, if you want to use ahamkara for self-control, of course, the best would be you don't identify with anything, and then it is very easy. But there's also other ways how you can have. Let's suppose you have the tendency to eat too much chocolate. Let's take a simple example. You have a tendency to eat too much chocolate, and how could you restrain that desire? If you talk to yourself, I want chocolate, but I should not eat it, then you identify, I want chocolate. And by identifying with this I, it's more difficult to control. And when you say, I should not eat it, then you put buddhi against your ahamkara. Buddhi says, it's not good to eat chocolate, especially it's not good to eat too much chocolate. And so the I says, I want chocolate, and the buddhi says, I should not eat it. But you could also talk differently to yourself. You could say, there's a desire in the mind, but I am a person of self-control. If you identify yourself as a person of self-control, then it will be easier to control it. And even if you don't judge yourself as a person of self-control, you could say, from now onwards, I'm a person of self-control. It's also an identification, but a better identification. From today onwards, I'm a person of self-control. And then you could say there's a desire in the mind, I'm a person of self-control. Or another example, you can say, well, I should meditate, I want to reach God realization, or meditation is good, but I'm a lazy person. So when you identify with laziness, I'm a lazy person, but I should meditate, your ahamkara, your identification goes with laziness. But you say, I should meditate, so your buddhi says something. And now buddhi and ahamkara are fighting, and of course there's this the samskara in the subconscious. The ahamkara identifies with this subconscious, and then it's getting more difficult. But you could also say, I'm a regular meditator. From today onwards, I'm a regular meditator. And if you say strongly, I'm a regular meditator, then there's no question whether you meditate or not, but you will meditate regularly. So the same, I gave the example last week when I said, from one day to the other, I became a vegetarian, and it wasn't difficult. There was a strength of conviction, but I also said, from today onwards, I'll be a vegetarian. And now, more than 10 years ago, I decided I become a vegan. So I said, from today onwards, I'm a vegan, so also no dairy products. And it was quite easy. I was actually quite amazed that it was easy, because even though I liked dairy products, and before I knew for animal purposes it's better, and just said from today onwards I'm vegan. And it was this, of course, better identification would be I'm the immortal self, I'm the Atman, but as a person I identify with something else. So now you could think a little bit about it. What is your self-image? You could, for example, say, I'm a compassionate person. I'm a spiritual aspirant. I'm a person of self-control. I am idealistic. And these are also ahamkara, and that's, you could say, sattvic ahamkaras. And you can even change that by saying I am, or I'm a person of self-control, or I am whatever. And whenever you have something which is where you can get out of self-control, you can say I'm a person of equanimity, I'm a person of love, I'm a person of and so on. So for 1 or 2 minutes, you can just think about some identification which you might already have, and which are positive ones, which you can put into words, and which will help you to get more self-control. And you can now also think about some areas where you might lack self-control. And then you can think about which kind of identification you could use to counter that. It could even be, let's suppose you have a child which sometimes is, could say, pushing the right buttons to get you angry. You could say, I'm a good father, I'm a good mother. And a good mother is one which is I'm a good and balanced father, good and balanced mother, or compassionate or understanding. Depends on your child and the situation. Or if you have a boss who is often somehow trying to get you into troubles, or who seems to love you, challenging you, you could say, I'm a self-controlled person, and you could even say it's under my dignity to be to get to be put out of equanimity. Do you have any question? If not, I'll leave it with this. Again, the four parts of the mind: ahamkara, buddhi, manas, and chitta. And today, for some practice for next time, ahamkara. How do you see yourself? How you speak with yourself? How do you identify? And also, how can you identify with something else? And how can you can have positive identifications which will help you to get more into self-control? Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you very much, Sukhdevji. Any questions? Anybody of dear friends? As Sukhdevji mentioned about that model of Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankara. Any questions about that? He mentioned about three different verses of Bhagavad Gita that talks about yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate, kar yoga karmshu kaushalam, dukh sanyoga viyoga, as he mentioned, is yoga. He also mentioned about those verses of Patanjali Yoga Sutra that talks about Sutra number 3, that we are not our mind, thoughts, or emotions. So, any questions about any of these? And the technique he suggested about, if at all we need to have ego, then let's have a better or a positive ego, which motivate us in getting better self-control. Perfect. So even Indian subcontinent is completely in the mood of Diwali, and wherever people who follow Indian traditions or any traditions related to this particular stream of thoughts, they all must be completely in Diwali today. We are so lucky that Sukhdevji got time today with us, and on such a pious day, we had deliberations on self-control. So on behalf of all the audience, Sukhdevji, thank you very much for being here with us today. And dear friends, Acha, we have one question from Madhulika ji, India. Is there any special type of meditation to control our sukshma ahankara?
Yes, there are two kinds of meditation. You would say the highest meditation would be you observe your thoughts, you observe your emotions, and you observe the subtle process of you identifying with it, and you don't identify. So it's called Sakshi Bhav. This means the observing, the watching, not identifying. That would be the highest technique, where you just watch and observe. And there is the second one, which is the more relative one, where you identify, you strengthen these higher identifications. So if you get angry easily, then you could have that. You could also say it's an kind of affirmation. You say, from today onwards, I'm a person of self-control. From today onwards, I'm a person of, and so on. Or you could say, I am a compassionate person, therefore I'll behave in this way. So you put some positive identification, some affirmation with which you control your tamasic or rajasic ego, saying, I'm powerless, he's driving me nuts, and so on, and I'm weak, and so on. So you build up a more positive identification, and then it's easier to control.
I hope that answers the question, Madhulika ji. Thank you very much, respected Sukhdev ji, for your time. And dear friends, as Europe is going back with their time saver, daylight saving. So, in light of that, next week the class will be 6 to 6:45 p.m. CET instead of 7 to 7:45 p.m. CET. So I repeat, next week class will be 6 to 6:45 p.m. CET. It means India time, it will be from 10:30 to 11:45 IST. So people who have already registered, they will also get this information through their message or email. So thank you very much, dear friends. Thank you very much, respected Sukhdev ji. Looking forward to listen more from you next week once again. We acknowledge your presence, Sami ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukadev ji. Thank you, Vikram ji.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Gayatri Emiji. And I'll say 3 times Om.
The review of the Yoga Sutra is very interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you next.
See you. Om. 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 Yogena chittasya padena vacha malam sharirasya cha vaityakena yopakarotam bravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. And special blessings for Diwali. May all beings be happy. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace be unto all. Satgurunath Maharaj ki
Jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Sukhdev ji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vikranji. Thank you very much, all participants.
Thank you.
See you next week.